Yay! Lots of claps. So welcome everybody, and welcome to the very unusual Getting Out of Debt Joyfully book launch online. I am so grateful that you guys are all here, and I'm very grateful that we got to do this. And it's really interesting for me. There's been so many changes with business and how we live our life. And usually when we do a book launch, we go, oh, what class am I going to? And we can do a book launch at that class. And I actually really like this. I love this idea that you can all be where you are. I can be where I am, and we can have a massive book launch and we can share this with the world. And I am really grateful to all the translators and everybody who has contributed to this book, Getting Out of Debt Joyfully. And I know that those words, getting out of debt joyfully, sometimes people are like, what? Getting out of debt joyfully? Well, I lived it. And, you know, I was just talking to Francesca Friantini, the wonderful Francesca, and she's in Australia at the moment. And I was talking to her about, you know, and I've asked Christopher Hughes to come on here too, which I'm going to talk to him in a second. And so many of us that you meet us, and I know a lot of people have the point of view of, oh, they had money or they have money. That's not the way we were all brought up. I was brought up and I had, you know, more money than most. Like I was brought up in a family that was above middle class. I went to a private school. I was very much, you know, I didn't lack of anything. And yet my father, my wonderful, beautiful father, who passed away, I think about 6 years ago now, he was amazing, and he would always try and give me anything. Like he'd try and give me money, he'd try and give me anything. And I was this petulant daughter, hands on hips, going, no, I don't want your money. I can do it on my own. I don't need this and I don't need that. And for years and years and years, I refused to receive from him. How many of you have refused to receive? So you create this whole mess or crap around money, rather than actually have money that can show up in your life with absolute ease. So like I said, for years and years and years, I refused to receive money from my parents or receive any situation. And I had such a strong point of view about money that, you know, I went through the phases of money is terrible, it's awful, it's evil, you know, the root of all evil, as they say. It's like all of these different things. And I created business. I created so many different things. And I used to always talk about that I didn't need money, that money wasn't something that I required. So I would do everything I could not to receive it. And then what I noticed was I went overseas and I was traveling and I was creating this business and creating many different things. And I was, as soon as money would come, I'd be like, it was like a hot potato. I was like, how fast can I get rid of this? You know, what bills do I have to pay? Who can I spend it on? Can I buy something for someone? Or I never enjoyed having money. I was always like, how quick can I get rid of it? So how many of you, when you receive money, you don't think you deserve it? So you look at, well, who can I give it away to? How quickly can I get rid of this money? And it was actually at a class I did with Jane here in Amsterdam many, many years ago. And I had this bunch of money in my hand. And Dane looked at me and he said, when are you going to allow yourself just to have money? I was like, what are you talking about? And he goes, well, he said, you make money. He said, that's your money. You created that money. You made that money. And you try and get rid of it just as fast as you made it. And I knew he was correct. I knew he was correct. And I looked at the money in my hands and I was like, God damn, you know, I try and get rid of it just as fast as I create it. So what would it look like if I was just willing to receive money and have money? And a totally different reality started showing up. And for years and years and years, I listened to Gary and Dane talk about the tools of access consciousness with money, and every other area of my life that I was using access consciousness tools, things were changing really quickly and really dynamically. And I literally would hear, you know, the money tools and be like, oh yeah, blah, blah, blah. Here we go again. The tools, you know, talking about money. And my point of view was, this is not going to work. Notice the question there. Oh yeah, there is no question. It was a total conclusion. These tools are not going to work. And one day I was sitting in a class in Gold Coast, Australia, and Gary and Dane, again, were talking about the tools of money. And I was sitting in the audience and I went, you know what? What if I just started using these tools? Even just a few of them. What if I started using them? What could show up for me? So the interesting thing for me was when I made that demand of myself that I start using these tools, I didn't tell anyone, because I don't know about you, but a lot of the times I noticed that when I was really choosing something and really wanted to change something, there wasn't many people around me at that time. Now I get the sense that I'm very lucky and I have a hell of a lot of people around me who are very, very supportive. And yet at that time, I didn't. It's like I had more people who were more comfortable in seeing me not succeed. Like, I'll give you an example. I was used to smoke cigarettes, and I wanted to give up. I wanted to give up smoking. So I think we need, yeah, cool. We need to mute people. Thank you. And I wanted to give up smoking, and I told all my friends, hey, I'm going to give up smoking. And I was really excited about it. And they looked at me and went, yeah, I bet you can't do it. I bet you'll be smoking within 2 weeks. And I realized and went, wow, that's not really supportive. And true enough, I was smoking within 2 weeks again. And then when I actually did give up smoking, I didn't tell anyone. And I just chose for me, and I stopped smoking cold turkey. And it took about 3 weeks before anyone actually noticed and went, hey, I haven't seen you have a cigarette. And I was like, yeah, I gave up smoking. And I just did it like that. But I did it because I chose to do it, and I chose to create a different reality. And I didn't need the support of others. When you have people around you who are truly grateful for you and support you, it's a really different energy. And you may have that and you may not have that. So when I looked at my expenses and looked at my finances and everything and finally went, you know what, I've got to change something here. I've got to change something. I didn't tell anyone that I was going to start using these tools, and I just started implementing them. And I'm not kidding, within 3 weeks, my finances started to change. And there was some really random things that showed up, because the thing is, if you could work everything out with your logical mind, you would have everything you ever desired. It's the insane points of view that you have that lock you up. And now let me give you an example. One of the insane points of view that I had was I heard my father, who I told you I absolutely adored, I heard my father say one day that he wasn't going to die, he wasn't going to leave this planet until he knew that all of his kids were financially stable. And my brother was doing fine. I had 2 stepsisters, they were doing fine. And somewhere in my insane world, I went, oh, I should create myself to be a financial mess, because then my father will stay alive. So I did, created myself to be a financial mess. And when I realized this, I went, wow, that is really good thing you're cute, Simone, because sometimes you're not very bright. I was like, that's really not creating anything great. And I actually spoke to my father about it, and he was from Lithuania, and I'm going to do a really bad Lithuanian accent. But he was like, Simone, he's like, what are you doing? And he was like, this is not creating anything great. And I was like, I know. And he was like, you can change this. He was really empowering. He actually reminds me a lot of Gary Douglas, the founder of Access Consciousness. And he was very empowering. And he always spoke to me about the choices that I had. And he would always say, Simone, you have choice. What are you going to choose? And he was like, you know what? You can change this. You can choose something different. And I knew at that moment that I did have a choice to change something different and make something, like do something different. And so what I actually did was, at one point, because I knew I was creating a financial mess, didn't quite know exactly what that was looking like. Like, how many of you don't actually know what's happening with your finances? So what I did was I got all of my bills and I got everything, and I sat in my office one day. I lived in Brisbane, Australia at the time. And I got all of my bills out, and I looked at all my bank accounts and went online, and I just spent the day looking at everything. And by the end of the day, I realized that I was 187,000 Australian dollars in debt. Now, here's the thing. You would not have been able to tell. I wasn't one of those people creating the trauma and drama and talking about the debt I was in and how devastating it was. I was actually creating my life. I would choose all the time. I was just not creating enough money to cover all the expenses that I was choosing. And I wasn't willing to look at it. And I don't know, somewhere I thought that someone was going to magically come in and just go, don't worry, Simone, we've got this, kapow, and change it all for me. And that wasn't occurring. So I sat there and I looked at all my finances and I realized I was $187,000 in debt, Australian dollars. And had a moment of a bit of a beyond, and then went, okay, what are we going to choose here? So I poured myself a glass of wine and went, okay, you need to make some different choices here. What other choices? And then I listened to this class that Gary and Dane did, and all these tools that I'd been listening to for ages and going, yeah, blah, blah, blah. And I went, okay, let's put some of them into action. So I started to put some of them into action, and I'll talk about 3 different tools tonight. And they're really simple that you can start to put into action and start to change your financial reality. Okay. The first one was looking at what is my point of view around money. Because how many of you grew up with a certain point of view? Like my family at dinner time, when we sat down for dinner, we were not allowed to talk about money and we were not allowed to talk about business. Now, my father was, he was pretty successful in business and he owned many different businesses. My brother studied accounting at university and he was also successful. I thought business was just so much fun. I mean, that's another book that I wrote that's in Italian, Joy of Business. To me, business was something that was so malleable and you could keep creating and just create a difference in the world and also make money from doing it. So I wanted to talk about business and money at the dinner table and we weren't allowed to talk about it. It was something that was like, shh. So how many of you were brought up and you weren't allowed to talk about money? It was considered rude. It's just friggin' money. And, you know, when I had a relationship with Brendan Watt for 8 years and I had a stepson, and when I had my stepson, we made it very much like if Nash ever asked us a question about money, we would give him the information. Someone asked you about money, if your kid asked you about money, give you the information. So what I realized was so many of the points of view that I had about money were not even mine. So how many of the points of view do you currently have about money that are not even yours? And everything at that is times a godzillion, we destroy and uncreate it. All right, and wrong, good and bad, pock and pot, all nine shorts, boys and beyonds. That's the Access Consciousness Clearing Statement. And you can find out more about it on theclearingstatement.com or speak to one of these fabulous, amazing Italian facilitators that we have here too. They can help you out. And we'll send you a list of and a link to all the facilitators if you're on here and you don't know what that is. But you know what? It works. So what I started to ask was, what is my point of view around money? Like, what's my point of view around money? And I was talking to a friend of mine the other day and she was with someone and they were saying, oh, this is expensive. And they went, it's only expensive if that's your point of view. Like, what if you made a lot of money? Then you don't even look at it as expensive. So what's your point of view around money? What point of view do you have around money that you haven't been willing to acknowledge, that if you did acknowledge it, would allow you to create an entirely different financial reality for you? And everything at that is where you destroy and uncreate it. Right and wrong, good and bad, pock and pot, all nine shorts, boys and beyonds. So the first tool that I started with was having a look at what is my point of view around money. And one of the things that I know I have is a generosity of spirit. And I've heard Gary talk about this as well, Gary Douglas, the founder of Access Consciousness, when his mother used to say to him, oh, Gary, you're never going to have any money because you're always generous with it. So that's the point of view he grows up with. You're never going to have any money because you're always generous with it. What if it didn't work like that? What if you had a generosity of spirit? Excuse me. What if you had a generosity of spirit and it actually created greater? Like, what do you want to create with money? You get to create your reality with money. So just ask, what's my point of view with this in regards to this? If you hear in your head, oh, that's too expensive, or I would never, do that or choose that, ask, okay, so is that actually true for me? What's true for me? All right. The second tool that I used, which was totally so odd for me, was to carry an amount of money around with me that you perceive a wealthy person would carry. This is one of the tools that Gary and Dane spoke about. Like, these aren't hard, you get that, right? But what they are designed to do is change the way you look at something. So I started carrying around with me about $1,000. And I also carried it in Canadian, New Zealand money, American money, and some Euro and Australian money, because to me that represented more how I was living my life. I started to travel a lot. So in a little purse, I carried about $1,000 around with me. And people used to say to me, well, how do you carry that money around with you? What if someone takes it? Can I tell you, when you have an amount of cash on you that you perceive a wealthy person carries, you know where your wallet is at all times. You know where your handbag is at all times. And if someone took it, it's just money. What's your point of view around money? And it took me quite a while to realize this. And one day, years later, after using this tool of carrying an amount of money around with me, and you don't spend this money, okay? This is not for like, oh, I'm stuck at the shop and I found this new pair of shoes or anything. It's like, no, you just have the money on you. That's it, okay? And I actually use, which my third tool is a 10% account. I use my 10% to carry around with me. And when you have that money on you, it's a different energy because you're not lacking. You're not functioning from this lack. You actually have something on you. So it creates a difference and it creates a change. And one of the things that, Einstein says that if you do the same thing and expect a different result, that's the definition of insanity. So how many of you are trying to do the same thing and expect something different to show up? So you're actually functioning from an insane point of view rather than what is going to create something greater. And everything that is where you destroy and uncreate it. Right and wrong, good and bad, pock and pot, all names, shorts, boys and beyonds. Now, years later, randomly, I was looking in my wallet and I went, you know what? I pretty much have at least $1,000 on me at all times. And I went, whoa, I just became a wealthy person. Because that was my point of view years ago. What amount of money would a wealthy person carry for them? Now, it's different for all of you. It doesn't have to be €1,000, $1,000. It's different for every single one of you, okay? But I carried what I perceived that was. And then when one day I realized I always have around that much money or more on me, I became a wealthy person. And I was like, yes, how does it get any better than this? What else is possible? The third tool, and there's many tools that I use, but this is the 3 that I started with. The third tool was, which made absolutely no sense to me, especially because I was in debt. $187,000 in debt. And the tool was to put 10% of everything that you earn away, just for you, an honor account. Not for a rainy day, not to buy a brand new pair of shoes, not to help a friend out, not to pay your rent when you don't have your rent, none of that. It was just to put 10% of everything you earn away. So you earn €100, you put €10 away. That's just for you. And this made, like I said, no sense to me. I was like, this is crazy. But I knew I had to change something, because if I didn't change something, nothing else, my money situation wasn't going to change. So what I did, and this is probably the tool I resisted the most, but what I did was for 3 months, I went, okay. And I actually set an alarm on my phone for 3 months because I thought this was crazy. And for 3 months, I went, I'm going to do this and see what changes. What's the worst thing that can happen? After 3 months, I just spend the money. So what I did was I put 10% away of everything I earned that was just for me into a bank account. And at the end of 3 months, I looked at it and went, okay, I don't have a great deal of money in there, but what I noticed was the energy around money had changed for me. Like a lot of the times I was living from week to week rather than actually having money. And I looked at my bank account and I went, wow, I have money. Like I could not work for the next couple of months and I'd be fine. I had enough money to pay my rent. I had enough money to, buy food, etc. So I would be okay. And there was a relaxation in my world that I hadn't had in years, pretty much, I think, since I was growing up and my, parents were looking after me. And that's what I recognized and went, oh, from that relaxation with my life and my living, there was a different energy around money. So this all also ties into that point of view that you have around money. And it's like, what's your point of view around money? And so a great question to ask is, if I was creating my financial reality, what would I choose and what would I change? Every day, write yourself a little note. If I was creating my financial reality, what would I choose and what would I change? Everything at that is time for Godzillion, right and wrong, good and bad, pock and pot, nine shorts, boys and beyonds. So hence I ended up like getting completely out of debt. And can I tell you, the day I got out of debt, I was sitting in that same office in Brisbane, Australia, and I was looking at my bank accounts and everything, and I went, that's it? That's it? I'm out of debt? And I was seriously like, where's the fireworks? And it's like, where's the people marching in going, yay, Simone, you did it? And it was like, there was none of that. If anything, it was sort of like a letdown. And then what I noticed was I was out of debt, and within 2 weeks, I created myself being back in debt. Now, luckily, I had the Access Consciousness tools and asked myself a question and went, okay, so what do I love about being in debt? And I realized it was so familiar to me. I knew how to be in debt. I actually didn't know how to be having money. So how many of you actually know how to be with having huge amounts of money in your bank account? Like, do you ever get to that stage where you have money in your bank account and you're like, oh, I don't need to create anything more because I have money? Or do you use no money as the source of creation? What if money never controlled you again? Because if you create no money, you create the debt, you create all of these different points of view, then if you make it significant, money is what will control you. You are the source of creation, not money. That's for Ayla. And I also invited my wonderful friend here, Christopher Hughes. You want to wave, Christopher? You want to come off mute? Now, at the back of the book, I actually asked, because one of the things I mentioned right at the beginning here is, I know when people meet me, I think they have the point of view that, oh, you've always had money, that's easy for you. And it's like, no, it wasn't. It's like I used the tools and I created money. I didn't grow up in poverty, but I didn't grow up with a huge amount of money. Okay. I've been there, done that. So I actually interviewed Christopher Hughes. I interviewed Brendan Watt, Dane Heer, Gary Douglas, and Stephen Chitisa Bowman. And there's at the back of the Getting Out of Debt Joyfully book, there's a chapter with all of these wonderful friends I have and how they looked at money, how they were with money, and what they created with that. So Chris, you disappeared on my screen.
I'm here.
You're here. Okay, cool. Hi.
Hello.
So I was wondering if you could also talk a little, so one of the stories that I love hearing about, didn't like that you were in that situation at the time, but the story about when you didn't have enough money to put petrol in your car, gas in your car, and you left it at the side of the road, etc. Do you want to tell that story, or a couple of tools that you use to get out of debt?
Absolutely. I was actually reflecting on this today, and it's amazing to me how fast, when you actually use these tools, things really can change. Because I moved to Australia, where I live now. I was originally born in Canada, but I moved to Australia about 10 years ago. 10 years and 2 months.
Wow.
Exactly. And when I first moved here, it wasn't like a move that made sense. And I wasn't coming here with like a big bunch of savings to pad myself through. And it was like a bit of a spur of the moment choice, and found myself here with nothing really other than the shirt on my back. And I did all kinds of odd jobs. I definitely was not living high on the hog, as you might say. And there were situations like Simone discusses where my car started running down and I ran out of petrol. I didn't have the money to fill up the car with more fuel, but I had bought some Christmas gifts for some people, and including Brendan Watt, I think I had some Christmas gifts for in the back of the car that I had money for. And I remember gathering those things out of the car and just leaving it on the side of the road. And that's where I was 10 years ago. the funny thing to me now, and I remember actually what got me thinking about this today was I was driving down the road today and I was driving beside a Vespa. And when I first arrived here in Australia, I wanted a Vespa and I looked at the price of the Vespa and they were $2,500. And at the time I thought, wow, well, that might be difficult. It might take me a while. But if I really work hard and really save and try hard, I might get there. And the funny part about that to me was today I was driving and the Vespa was there beside me. And I was going to the building that we just bought for over $2 million.
So you skipped the Vespa and bought a $2 million building. Well done, Chris.
But I say that because what I really would love people to get, and why I think your book is so valuable and so important, is that was created through the willingness to consistently ask questions and choose change, rather than buying anything as solid and real and the way it is. What's been amazing to me constantly is always challenging myself around what I think is appropriate and possible. So for all of you out there who are new to some of these tools, or new or not, looking at your financial situation as sort of fixed, please have a look at what your point of view, as Simone said, one of the first things she did, have a look at what your point of view is around money and where you have bought somebody else's reality with money. Because I guarantee you, your reality is more likely than not light years ahead of what you grew up with.
So Christopher, is there any like access consciousness tool that comes up for you that you can share with everyone tonight that helped you change your point of view around money?
Yeah, well, my whole thing that kind of kept me broke more often than not was I've always been really good at creating money and
that you showing off your diamond ring.
Well, that's actually a great example. I was always really good at creating money and creating revenue, but not necessarily having. And the tool that you just talked about that I had the most resistance to was the 10% account. I was always like, oh yeah, whatever. That's ridiculous.
Me too. I thought it was like, oh, it's not going to work.
But I had to trick myself into it.
How did you trick yourself into it?
I bought things that were valuable, that weren't easy to sell. Well, they were, but they were going to take enough effort that I know myself to be lazy enough that if, see, what I would buy was silver coins and bricks, because silver was less expensive than gold. And I could start with a silver coin that was $30 Australian, or for you guys in Italy, that's like 15 euro. You know, that's not a big investment, but I could make that investment in silver coins. And I knew that if I wanted to go and exchange the silver for cash and get the cash and deposit it in the bank, it was going to be a bit of work.
Mm-hmm.
So I fooled myself into having money by buying these bricks and coins made of silver, or silver spoons, or paintings, or rings, or things that were actually valuable. And to the point where I started looking around my house and I went, holy shit, if I wanted to redecorate my bedroom, the paintings and the furniture and the rugs, if you didn't open the drawers and look at any of the jewelry, it would cost $200,000 to redecorate this room. But again, that summation and that total amount is one thing, but it started with a little silver bowl for $100. And you keep adding, and you keep adding, and you keep adding, until finally you look around and go, oh, wow, there's a lot here.
Yeah, I think that's really important to have a look at too, is to just start. Like, just start. Like when I had, I opened a stock pool, and have a look at what works for you. Like, look, ask, okay, so what revenue streams can I create? And it's like, and what's available? What would be fun for you? So for me, one of the things that was fun for me is a stock portfolio. And my point of view was, oh, if you start a stock portfolio, you've got to start it with thousands of dollars. Why? Whose point of view is that? Again, it goes right back to that first question. What's your point of view around money? It's like I had the point of view that it was almost embarrassing to start a stock portfolio with a small amount of money. But I did. I started it with like $100. And with my bank, my local bank, I started it and I opened up a portfolio. And then I just started to play with some penny stocks. Now, this took years. And every time I had a spare $100, $50, $500, I put it into my portfolio and then I would buy some stocks. And one thing I would say is if you ever invest money, you have to be willing to lose it all. Okay. Every time I invested money, I was willing to lose it. So it became a fun choice. It became a fun choice, not this like necessity to make money from that. So when I chose it for the fun of it, and then years later, and I kept buying these stocks and buying these stocks and buying these stocks. And my accountant said to me, you know what, you're putting too much money into this one thing. You're putting all your eggs in one basket, as they say. And I was like, okay. But it's like, I kept asking, will this make me money? Will this make me money? And is it fun for me? Yeah, it's fun. Let's do it. So I chose it. Now, myself and Brendan Watt and Gary Douglas and Dane here, we all bought these same stocks. We ended up selling these stocks and buying a house in Noosa, Australia that was, 2.7 million. We bought that from buying penny stocks. And when we actually sold the stocks and bought the house, my accountant said to me, why didn't you tell me about these stocks? And I was like, oh, are you kidding me? And I said, I did tell you about these stocks, but she wasn't willing to hear that at that point.
Yeah.
So the one thing I want to say is it's like, go with what you know. Hey, Francesca, can I ask you too? It's like, I mean, a lot of people know you and I mean, look at this beautiful jewelry and this necklace that you're wearing right now and the earrings, etc. That, by the way, you got from the Guild.
Yeah.
But when I first met you, you could barely even afford to buy Dane's book. Is that correct?
Yeah. Probably when you met me, I already bought the book because otherwise you would have not met me. But just right before, like when I started doing Access, and for me, like I didn't have any credit cards. Spending $35 in a book was too much for me. And of course, and then I realized how much I was using money as an excuse to not create. So when I found the Access Consciousness tool, I was like, you know what? I don't have a credit card, I have a family and full of debts. I think I threw my hands past millions, but didn't, not even a pen stayed in my wallet at that time. That was interesting. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to look anything for free that will make me, now everything is available that will make me change my money situation. But that's true. When Chris was talking about that he didn't have fuel to, move his car, I remember the sensation. Actually, I got these memories a few weeks ago about myself and looking at myself compared to my sisters, that she was used to go at least once a month to Milan. It's like a couple of hours from Venice, where I was used to live, that to do shopping or to just like, a day in Milan. And I couldn't afford that train ticket for myself and my daughter. I never went. When now I'm traveling the world and I'm choosing business class. But I still remember the memory. I'm like, whoa, my body was like, there was a sense, I'm like, oh, now it's no longer like that. And it's been like choosing. And I want to thank you so much, Simone, because I've been hearing and reading and listening to all these amazing tools that you are talking about. But there's been a day when I'm like, you know what? Now it's time. I'm choosing it. No one can tell you. You have to choose, as you say. And then I start asking for more to shop in my life. And magically, it did. So magically, or through our choices, because we have this capacity. So I want to really thank you, because I was already working with you and I couldn't afford a private school for my daughter. my own, you know, I was earning 500 euro a month. That was nothing. But then I'm like, oh, Simone told me in one of her book that if you write down what is your life that you desire to create, what will cost the life you desire to create. And then I started doing that. And a couple of weeks later, you offer me another job, access consciousness. Like it's been like this change, but I know that it's been based on my request. And so because every time, yeah, anyway, good. I'm so excited. Thank you for that.
You're so welcome. And I love that because it is based on your request. So, and it's based on the demand that you have of you and the request of the universe. It's like, that's the way it works. So, Mr. Christopher, it's like, do you have anything else you want to add there with any other tool or anything that you want to?
Yeah, like I say, just keep looking at what it is you truly desire. And you don't have, it's not one choice that will create that, but it's choosing it every day, even if it's just a spoon when you want the whole dining table for 12.
Yeah.
Just choose what you can today and just start with what is available. And every now and then, it never helps if you look at the end from today and get overwhelmed with where it is you want to go and you're not there yet. But every now and then, what has really encouraged me is to look back and go, holy shit, look at where I am today versus 6 months versus a year versus 5 years ago.
Yeah, well, I remember like the house that I live in now, I was renting it with Brendan to begin with, and we met with our accountant and it was for sale. And she said to me something like, why don't you buy it? And I looked at her and went, what do you mean, why don't we buy it? And she went, well, why don't you buy it? And I went, she's my accountant. If she's saying that, she actually really knows my finances. And I was like, is that actually possible? But I did not think it was possible. I thought that I would have to inherit to actually get a house. And it's like, and I come across that point of view so much in the classes that we do, is people have decided that the only way that they can, you know, create a house is to inherit the money. And it's like, no. And it's like, you get to create your life. You get to create your living. You get to create your financial reality. And I mean, there's so many people on here that I know of that have changed their reality. So, and I wanted to deliberately tell you these stories because I do see people that meet us and go, oh, look, they're wearing gold, they're wearing jewelry, they're doing this, they're wearing nice clothes, etc. No, we chose to create that as our lives. What is it that you would like to choose? And as Chris says, start with buying a silver spoon, you know, start with something. Don't put everything as this, you know, so far in front of you that it becomes something that's impossible. Just start. What is it that you would like to choose? What is it you'd like to create as your life? So I would like to open it up now because I know we've got another 10, 15 more minutes. So if anyone wants to ask any questions, I know the lovely Chiara is going to translate, or maybe you speak English, I'm not sure. If anyone has any questions?
Hello there. We do have some questions. So okay. I'm going to read you one question from Maria. And there she goes. So, when you have to...
I should be able to understand Italian by now.
I know.
Right, Simone with me here all the time.
Exactly.
When you have 2 companies in your past that have been failing and you have the feeling that you are and always be in debt, what question can you ask?
Okay. So first of all, I would actually look at getting the Joy of Business book. It's translated into Italian. It was one of the first languages that we did for Joy of Business. And what I would ask you too is, if you were being brutally honest with yourself, it's like, do you actually desire those businesses? Or are you deliberately destroying them so you can create something else? And what I'm going to say is, been there, done that. It's like, I really love creating. It's one of my favorite things is to, you know, you get this generative idea and you're like, oh, what can we create? I like that. And then when a business, you know, is created and then it sort of has this maintenance area, it's like, that's not my favorite thing. So that's the moment that you go, okay, who or what else can I bring in to contribute to the business? because what I would end up doing is start destroying the business so that I could go, see, and it's like the business is destroyed. So now I have to create something different. So it had my reason and justification for doing something else. So what I would, because if you're creating it to be like that, it's like you're creating it. You get to create anything. And I know that that may seem like a really wild thing to say, but you do. Everything that is showing up in your life, it's like you have that because you created it. I mean, I was talking to Chris Hughes today when I was out going for a walk. And then I got off the phone. I started to look at the things that I had in my life as well. And I was like, wow, all these properties that I have in Australia, I own, I'm part owner of a castle in Italy. Like, I'm sorry, I'm Australian. And it's like, that's odd. You don't go, oh, yes, I'm going to own part of a castle in Italy. You know, I'm also investing in property in Costa Rica because we're building a resort there. And it's like, and I'm also looking at maybe possibly buying a like a small house in Texas out in the country near Gary and Dane's ranch because I've got my horses there. Why not? And it's like, these are things that I never would have thought could show up in my life, but you get to create it. So if your businesses aren't working, ask, truth, do I actually truly desire this business? Is it time for me to move on? Or what is it that I would actually like to create? Like if you had no point of view, what could you choose?
Thank you, Simone. So we have a couple of other questions that you've been answering to. But so there is someone, I don't know the name, Risvegliarsi, that asks, I closed my wellness center beginning of March. I'll start to work again in June. I made a quick calculation, and in 3 months, I lost around 25,000 euros. This money have been lost for limitation that has been imposed to me. How can I get them back?
Okay, so what if it wasn't about getting that money back? What if you started to look at what you've gained? And I know for myself, it's like I've been home now. It was like day 527 or something. You know, I mean, we are not as, you know, in isolation as Italy. And yet I came home from Europe and I had to have self-isolation for 2 weeks in my house. And admittedly, I love my house. It's beautiful and I thoroughly enjoyed it. And now I think it's been about 6 weeks since we've been home. And I have not been home in 6 weeks in at least 10, 12 years. I travel all the time and I work overseas. That's what I do. So my situation has changed, but I've looked at what I've gained. And I have a sense of peace with myself and my body that I haven't allowed myself to have in a really long time. It's like even I'm noticing the way I'm being with my body and the way I'm being with nature and the earth. It's like we have, oh my God, these are most amazing amount of butterflies, you know, flying around Phrygian Beach at the moment. The ocean, which is across the road, is extremely loud. And the hiking and the bushwalks that I've got to do. And even notice there's nothing about money in that. It's like the communion that I'm choosing with the earth is like, you can't put a price on that. But even things like I'm noticing my skin, it's like, and my body and how it's being, my body is thoroughly enjoying being at home. So am I creating the amount of money that I would have if I was away? No, it's different. But what if you didn't look at what you were lacking? And what if you actually started to ask, okay, so what am I gaining from this? And everyone I've spoken to in this situation around the world right now, it's like I notice it's sort of almost like these two different types of people. Like, and you know, when you cook and you have a sifter, and it's like there's some people who are just like, oh my God, my life is terrible, this is awful, and da da da, and they go to the trauma and drama. And then there's the other people who are going, wow, there's butterflies outside, there's something else that's possible. I'm cooking. I don't cook, okay? I make salads. I make a good salad and do a good platter. And that's about it. Francesca said, you cook now. I do. I made the best beef stroganoff last night. And it's like, you know, making soups, making lots of different things. And it's like, that's something that I haven't allowed myself to do and be. So what if you didn't look at what wasn't, and what if you looked at what you are actually gaining? And I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, but the world has changed. We are not going back to normal. It's not going back to what was. So now we get to create the future. What would you like to create as your future? And what I want you to do right now is like, because money is definitely up in a lot of people's worlds, and in some countries more than others. I get that. Okay. I get that. And I get some people have lost their jobs and other people are, you know, diversifying and creating money elsewhere. Or maybe your expenses are not as much anymore. Like when I do classes now, it's like I go to my kitchen to get a glass of water. I'm not paying €5 for a bottle of water. Okay. So my expenses are less. So, but what I want you to have a look at is what is it that you have created as your life now, and what have you gained, and what is it that you would like to create your future as? Because you get to choose this. If you look at this as something that is a detriment and has been put upon you as this devastation, that's what you were created as. If you look at this as something that can be created as greater, then that's what you would choose. Now, what I want you to do is I want you to tap into all the money around the world, the entire world, all the money, all the different currencies. Take a moment. Feel free to do it. Tap into all the money around the whole entire world. Now, what I want you to have a look at, is there a lack of money, or is there just people choosing lack of money? There's not a lack of money. There is so much money around the world. And as I said before, you are the source of creation. Money is not the source of creation, but you get to play with money, use money, have money, be with money. And this getting out of debt joyfully, you don't actually have to be in debt to buy the book. It's like, you know what, you can have money, and then you can exponentialize and increase your money flows. My point of view is no one needs to have a money problem. And I know that really annoys people sometimes, but no one needs to have a money problem. It's your point of view that creates your financial reality. So what if you were one of the people who no longer chose a lack of money? What would you choose? What's your next choice? Even just if you wake up and go, I have no idea what to do or what to ask, just ask, what next? What question can I ask today that would allow me to choose something greater than I chose yesterday? That simple. And everything at that is times a godzillion, right and wrong, good and bad, pock and pot, all nine, shorts, boys and beyonds.
There are a couple of more questions, if I can go for
Sure.
it. So Anna asked, what question can I ask regarding the word of finance and stock and action that are losing points right now?
So, okay, so here's an interesting thing, because with something like this situation that we're in the world now, and then when the stock market falls, how many of you start to buy into the commonality energy that occurs? Like people start to freak out and everyone goes, oh my God, I've got to sell my stocks. Or I noticed let me give you a classic example, and this is embarrassing to talk about, but Australia with toilet paper, it's the same thing that happens with stocks, okay? And it's like Australia started this insane, crazy point of view that when COVID-19 came out, that they had to buy toilet paper. And we were sold out of toilet paper for weeks on end, and it was insane. But that insanity is the same insanity that you can lift that up and take it to somewhere like the stock exchange. It's like, what I would ask is, what do you know? Like I found myself going, I've got to go buy toilet paper. And I was like, hang on a second. Whoa, you have toilet paper in the house. You don't have to go and buy toilet paper. But that energy is so easy to sort of buy into and create it as yours. So this is the moment where you have to go, okay, stop, use the Access Consciousness Clearing Statement. Everything at that is destroy and uncreate it, right and wrong, good and bad, pock and pot, all nine, shorts, boys and beyonds. What do I know? Am I going to run out of toilet paper? And I know I'm using this analogy of toilet paper, but that's how friggin' funny it is with everything. Okay, am I going to run out of toilet paper? Yes, no. Okay, what do I know about the stock exchange? What do I know about the stocks that I currently have? What do I know about currency trading? What do I know about this? And if you weren't buying into everybody else's point of view, what do you know? And play with that. And it's not about getting it right. And it's not about going to the wrongness of you. It's about knowing that you have choice and you have infinite choice. So what are you going to choose? Okay, I think we have time for one more question, Chiara.
All right, so we have one more question from Daniela. It's actually a bunch of questions, but it's one question. How can I make those choices knowing that I am a single mom with a daughter to maintain? I also always have the negative energy of my elder mom that squashes my creative enthusiasm. When I was living far away from the family, they were also entrepreneur. I was feeling much better, and at 20 I built up my wealth, and then I was flinged back to here close to my roots with a very negative mom.
Okay, so you get to choose again to buy into your mother's point of view or not. I have possibly one of the meanest mothers on planet Earth. I remember Gary Douglas said to me, your mother has the least amount of caring in her world to actually exist on planet Earth. And it's true. It's like now she's actually starting to get dementia and she's actually nice to me when I walk in the house, which is really cool. I'm like, this is working for me. Because I'd usually walk in and she would like sort of things, she'd go, oh, you haven't been to the hairdresser in a long time, have you? Or I remember one day she said, she talked about my eyes and was telling some people about how creepy my eyes were and how horrible they were. And I didn't realize it until my friend said to me, sometimes, you know, people would describe Simone's eyes as beautiful. And I was like, oh, hang on a second. This is her point of view. This is her point of view. And that's when I grew up with. So one of the things I did, and I know this is not the easiest thing to talk about, and it's probably a whole class, but I looked at, okay, so if I was to divorce my family, what would I choose? Now, divorcing my family doesn't mean that I never see them. I do see them. And it's like at the moment, you know, I see my mother on a regular basis. I go buy her food and take her food and make her soup and do all of that. But she doesn't get to control me. I get to choose my reality. She doesn't get to control me, okay? I can choose what I choose, not based on the necessity of their point of view. So that's a really big difference. Chiara, there was something that you mentioned right at the beginning of the question, and I wanted to address that, and it was so long that I forgot. What was the beginning part again?
Yeah, the beginning part was she's a single mom and she has a daughter too.
Yeah, thank you. So the single mom thing. So thank you for bringing that up too, because how many of you have a reason and justification for why you can't create? Single mom, it's like, or, you know, coronavirus, it's like, or you just got sacked, or you have a shitty mom or a shitty dad, or you're not educated, or what? Tell me, I want to hear, what's your reason and justification? What's your best reason and justification for you not actually having and creating everything you desire? Whatever it is. And everything that is where you destroy and uncreate it, right and wrong, good and bad, pock and pot, all nine shorts, boys and beyonds. What I would like you to ask is, how can I use this to my advantage? Now, I have this friend in Australia, and she's a single mom, 2 kids, absolutely no support from family or her ex-husband. And it was so beautiful to watch what she started to do as her kids grew older and they would desire different things like toys. So instead of saying, no, I can't get you that, I can't afford it, what she did was she sat down with them and said, okay, so you would like this toy. I don't have the money for it. What can we create? Let's create it. And what they started to do was go to what we would call garage sales in Australia on the weekend. And she said to them, okay, what I want you to do is look at the garage sales and see if there's anything that we could buy that you could sell for more money on eBay. And she set up an eBay account and said, let's do that. And then save up enough money so that you can buy the toy that you really want. And every weekend she would take her kids out and they would learn, and they would be like, oh, mom, there's this, they're selling it for really cheap. I know I could sell this for double, or etc. And she taught them about money, and she taught them about the 10% account. So she was educating and empowering her kids to actually create their financial reality, not using it as a justification that she's a single mom and she can't afford something. Don't put that upon your kids. It's like, what can they create? I mean, at one stage when I spoke to Nash and, you know, I was living with Brandon and my stepson, and we were talking to him about traveling because we were traveling a lot, and he didn't want to travel a lot. And then he did, you know, he went through phases as kids do. And he said to us, I'd like to travel more with you. And I said, okay, so we need to make more money then. And he looked at me. We're sitting in our kitchen, and he looked at me and he went, "Why do we need to make more money for me to travel with you?" And he was like 7. I went, "Well," and I said, "We've got to buy the extra air ticket, the accommodation." And I mentioned everything. And he looked at me and he went, "Oh, okay." And I said, "So will you contribute to us making more money?" And he went, "Yeah, I can do that." And then he just walked into his bedroom, and I was like, done. And I know we started creating more money when I asked him to contribute. So ask your kids, ask your dog, ask your house, ask everything to contribute to you making more money. This is not about you having to do it on your own. Everywhere that you've decided that you have to do it on your own, we destroy and uncreate it. Right and wrong, good and bad, pock and pot, all nine shorts, boys and beyonds. There's a universe out there. And there's an old, as a movie, I'm not sure if it's translated into Italian, it's called Anime. Doesn't matter, but I'll tell you the piece in this movie, okay? And Anime, who's this extravagant auntie, you know, and there's this one section in the movie where she talks about it, and she says, you know, the universe, there's a banquet available. There's a banquet of everything you can think of is available, and people are starving to death. So how many of you are walking through life and not opening your eyes to see the banquet that is actually available for you? What if you started to open your eyes and ask questions, be in question, and start to choose a different reality that works for you? Everything at that is times a godzillion where you destroy and uncreate it. All right, and wrong, good and bad, pock and pot, all nine shorts, boys and beyonds. So what I also wanted to do, maybe we can have like all the Italian facilitators here, like give a wave at the same time, because what we've done is we've asked them all, I'm waving, but I'm not an Italian certified facilitator, is that they all have access to be able to facilitate a class based on this book. So if you want to buy the book, it's like we'll have the links of where you can get the book, Getting Out of Debt Joyfully. And then they can also be there and available for you and talk to you about the Access Consciousness tools and see if you can actually start to change your financial reality as well. Okay, so we'll send a list. Do you want to all wave, the Italian certified facilitators? And we'll send a list of all those facilitators and a link to where all the classes are.
Ciao!
Ciao! And please know that you can choose and change anything, but you got to make that demand. Okay. So I want to thank Danilo. I know you've been translating me, and Chiara, you're wonderful. And my amazing people I work with, Lauren and Sarah, who are on here, and Christopher Hughes and Francesca, thank you for coming on here as my guests as well. I adore you guys. And thank you all for joining us here today. I know I can see everyone on the English Zoom, and there's a lot of people on the Italian Zoom as well. And so, and Miss Cass, thank you for, you know, you opened up Italy for us. It's like you started this whole ball rolling. So thank you for starting that ball to roll, and let's roll it even faster. Yeah. So let's do this.
Thank you, Simone. Love you.
Yes, I love you too. I love you guys. Thank you so much for joining us here today.
Ciao.
Mwah, mwah.
Ciao.
Ciao.
Tanti, 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 tanti soldi.
Soldi, 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 soldi.
Soldi, 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 soldi.
Money, money, money.
Money, money.
Money come, 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 money come.